Love. This program is Sojourners Along the Way, Love Gift to You. One of the greatest ways to love is to love yourself. What do sex hormones have to do with loving yourself? How do they affect your life negatively? They play a role in a number of fatal diseases. Ought not to be, does not have to be. Learn how. In this edition of Sojourners Along the Way, Drs. Neal Barnard, Dr. David Drozek, Dr. Michael Greger speak from a medical perspective of how to love yourself. Many, many good ideas. They have a lot of great information that could transform your life of sickness to one of health. And we have a newbie to Sojourners Along the Way, and that is Jennifer Mack, an excellent chef who teaches you how to be deliciously healthy. Jennifer and I became friends when we both worked in Beijing, China. This is why I'm wearing this particular t-shirt, and it is from someplace I worked in Beijing. As a point of interest, I wanted to show you the CCTV, which is Central China Television Station. Now, some information to assist you from Dr. David Drozek. Basic recommended goals for a healthy lifestyle. Recheck your fiber intake 1 day a week. Be more selective in the food options you have available. Check weight, same day and time each week. Consume 35 to 40 grams of fiber per day in a natural form. Eat at least 90% of your calories from a plant-based whole food source. Be active, aiming for 10,000 steps or 30 minutes of moderate exercise a day. And Dr. Drozek explains that if you eat something when you eat, do 10 minutes of exercise at each meal, and you'll have your 30 minutes per day very easily. Implement stress reduction techniques. Avoid sugared beverages. Avoid caffeine about 8 hours before going to bed. Minimize alcohol. Avoid tobacco. It is possible. It really is. You can do it. You may need to do it. And so do I. But it is possible. Dr. Drozek knows what it's like to be on the other side. He personally had to go through the things that are being suggested because of the health condition he dealt with. Dr. Drozek determined he would assist others to succeed. Dr. Drozek, along with some co-authors, has been published in a very prestigious medical journal, the Journal of American Osteopathic Associations, Lifestyle Doc US. And of course, you can contact Dr. Drozek by phone. Again, that number is 740-753-7323. If you are wondering where that is, it's in Nelsonville, Ohio. The United States is in trouble health-wise. We don't have to worry about somebody attacking us from outside of the United States because we're doing it on the inside, literally, inside the country and inside our bodies. It's time for us to say we want to take back our health. I'm sure you're going to enjoy many of the things that are being presented in this edition of Sojourners Along the Way. And Jennifer is a lot of fun, so enjoy Jennifer Mack in Beijing, China. Thank you very much.
Generally, adherence to a healthy lifestyle pattern has decreased during the last 18 years. Obesity is up, exercise is down, and eating just 5 servings of fruits and veggies a day dropped like a rock. And we didn't start out that great to begin with. Guess what percentage of Americans at the turn of the century had the following 4 healthy lifestyle characteristics? Not smoking, not overweight, 5 servings of fruits and veggies, and exercising a half hour a day, at least 5 days a week. 3%. And whether people were wealthy, college-educated, no subgroup even remotely met clinical or public health recommendations. Where are people falling down the most? If you look at heart disease risk factors, most people don't smoke, shown here in green. About half are exercising, but check out the healthy diet score, which gives folks points for drinking less than 4 cups of soda a week, for example. On a scale of 0 to 5, only about 1% score a 4 or a 5. So the American Heart Association's aggressive 2020 target to improve that by 20% would bring us up to like 1.2% of men and women. Given that we've known for decades that advanced coronary artery disease may be present by age 20, coronary atherosclerosis often even present in young children, it is particularly disturbing that healthy lifestyle choices are declining rather than improving in the U.S., and it shows. In terms of life expectancy, the U.S. is down around 27 or 28 out of the 34 OECD free market democracies. The people of Slovenia live a year longer than citizens of the United States. Why? Well, according to the most rigorous analysis of risk factors ever published, the #1 cause of death and disability in the United States is our diet. What about our diet is so bad? The worst 5 things about our diet is that we don't eat enough fruit, we don't eat enough nuts and seeds, we eat too much salt, too much bacon, hot dogs, lunch meat, etc., and not enough vegetables. That's based on data like this on diet quality and chronic disease mortality risk that found that those scoring higher using a variety of different systems that all agreed on more whole plant foods reduced the risk of dying from heart disease, cancer, and all causes of death combined. There's now an overwhelming body of clinical and epidemiological evidence illustrating the dramatic impact of a healthy lifestyle on reducing all-cause mortality and preventing chronic diseases such as coronary heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and cancer. So why do we eat so bad? Aren't we scared of dying from some of these horrible chronic diseases? It's almost as if we're eating as though our future didn't matter. And there's actually data to back that up. Death row nutrition. The growing macabre fascination with speculating about one's last meal offers a window into one's true consumption desires when one values the future, basically when one's value of the future is discounted close to 0. If the future didn't matter, what would we eat? Well, in contrast to pop culture anecdotes, this group of Cornell researchers actually created a catalog of actual last meals, the final food requests of 247 individuals executed in the United States during a recent 5-year period. The most commonly made request, meat. The researchers go out of their way to note, tofu never made the list. And no one asked for vegetarian. In fact, if you compare the last meals to what Americans normally eat, there's not much difference. If we continue to eat as though they were our last meals, eventually they will be.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mack at Be Deliciously Healthy. Welcome! As a whole food and raw food chef, I help people get off the SAD diet. You know, the standard American diet. Here's my story. After 10 years of being on medication for an autoimmune disease, I finally kicked the old bottle. Pill bottle, that is. My journey led me to eating more fresh fruits and veggies, whole food nutrition, clean eating, probiotics and fermentation, detox and cleansing. These same ingredients often end up on my face. Do real men eat kale? Kale, yeah. A few years ago, I started teaching classes and training private clients. I spoke and demoed at schools, companies, and organizations. That led to media exposure and my cookbooks, The Right Blend, blender-only raw food recipes, and Detox Delish, your guide to clean eating. Some call me a nutritionist. By trade, I'm a chef. People ask, are you vegan? Do you eat 100% raw food? I do lean towards plant-based eating, but I don't take an all-or-nothing approach to food. Some people call my clients picky eaters. I prefer the word educated. Of course, not all of them eat the same way. Some are raw vegan, some paleo, others gluten-free, some have to be on a low glycemic diet, but hey, that's where I come in. But I do believe in getting back to basics. I like to say, be deliciously healthy, and it's not an oxymoron. From vegetarian entrees, to low-carb veggie pastas, to high protein, to raw vegan options, to some of the most delectable...
Wait, are we on eating in moderation or raw vegan chocolate?
To superfood desserts with wholesome ingredients and no refined sugar.
But it all comes down to one thing. How may I help you? You can find me at thejennifermack.com. I cannot wait to connect with you. Until then, I'm Jennifer Mack, and be deliciously healthy.
To see the incredible effect fibre has on the body, we must first take a quick look at the role of sex hormones in cancer. For example, in breast cancer, the female sex hormone estrogen fuels the growth of cancer, and it makes it more likely not only to occur in the first place, but to spread. If a man has prostate cancer, the male hormone testosterone does the same thing, encouraging cancer growth and spread. Did you know that body fat actually makes and releases estrogen into the bloodstream? And just how fertilizer acts on weeds, estrogen is like a fertilizer to a cancer cell, making the disease more aggressive, and this is where fibre comes in. Let's hear from Dr. Neal Barnard on why fibre is so important.
If a woman is on a diet that's high in fat and very low in fiber, plant roughage, that kind of diet also increases the amount of estrogen in her blood, the amount of fertilizer on the weeds, if you will. Well, how does that happen? Well, researchers learned a long time ago that if a woman goes on a diet that has a lot of fat in it and not very much fiber, the amount of estrogen in her bloodstream goes up within just a couple of weeks. It's measurably higher than it was before. Part of the reason for this is that fiber helps your body get rid of extra estrogens. Picture this. Your liver is filtering your blood every minute of every day, and it's looking for things that don't belong there. And it will find extra estrogen, and it's in the blood. The liver pulls it out, it sends it down through a little tube called the bile duct into the intestinal tract, and sends it out with the wastes. So the liver is filtering the blood. Here's an estrogen. I don't think we need you anymore. Let's get rid of you. It pulls it out, sends it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract. Out it goes. Good system. Only problem is it depends on one thing, and it depends on fiber. If you ate plenty of fiber, I mean vegetables, fruits, beans, whole grains, then that little estrogen that the liver found, it sent it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract. It hooked onto the fiber, and the fiber is what carried it away. But let's say my lunch was skim milk, yogurt, chicken breast. How much fiber is in those foods? Well, they're not plants. They don't have plant roughage. There is no fiber in any of those foods. There is no fiber in anything from an animal. So what happens? The liver is filtering the blood, finds the estrogen, sends it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract. Where's my fiber? Where's my fiber? Where's my... There isn't any fiber. So what does it do? It goes back into the bloodstream. It's reabsorbed again, and it circulates around the body, and then it arrives back at the liver, and the liver actually removes that estrogen again, sends it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract, looking for fiber, looking for fiber, looking for fiber. There isn't any. It's reabsorbed again. And this estrogen does this circle we call enterohepatic circulation. Entero means intestinal tract. Hepatic means liver. And this works not just for estrogen, it also works for testosterone. A man who's at higher risk for prostate cancer, if he can't get rid of extra testosterone, he uses that same system. If he has lots of fiber in his diet, his testosterone level will be adequate but not excessive, because the liver finds the testosterone, gets rid of it.
Okay, why is fiber so important? It decreases the calories automatically if you eat foods that are rich in fiber. Only plant-based diet, only plants have fiber naturally. The processed foods tend to take fiber out. If any animal products have fiber, it's been put in there artificially. So fiber, if you think about it, it's on one. There's a couple of things. One is it's a filler. So any food, think French fries, small amount of French fries, because they're full of fat, which are high in calories, will give you the same amount of calories as something much bigger that's rich in fiber. Remember, we saw the full plate diet comparisons of the plate. The plates got bigger and fuller, but the calories went down. So fiber fills you up, and it decreases the calorie intake at the same time. So you're satisfied. You're not going around hungry, feeling like you've got to eat those high-calorie snacks. The other thing, fiber is just not a filler. It's important to your digestive tract. Actually, we've seen very clearly that the type of bacteria that grow in the intestinal tract of somebody who eats a plant-based diet is healthier and actually promotes health. Since you're asking, Cleveland Clinic did some really intricate studies that were pretty interesting about promoting heart disease. They noticed that people who were eating any kind of animal products, within 20 minutes, they can measure this jump in something called TMAO in their bloodstream, which promotes atherosclerosis, the hardening of the arteries. Then they thought, well, this might be coming from the bacteria in the intestinal tract. So they gave people antibiotics to kill all the bacteria. They again fed them a steak. No increase in the TMAO. After a while, as they ate and the bacteria came back, they started to get this increase again. Then they took some vegans, people not eating any animal products, gave them a steak. No increase in the TMAO, because people who are eating the plant-based diet grow different bacteria. The bacteria that are causing us harm, that produce that TMAO in the animal products, are the ones we're feeding all the time when we're eating the wrong way. So they're there causing this constant state of inflammation. Some of you might have heard about an anti-inflammatory diet. Well, that's basically a plant-based diet. Animal products cause inflammation. This TMAO is part of that whole inflammation process that speeds up atherosclerosis, the heart disease, increases the risk of cancers, many types of cancers and things like that. So the question I have is then how, if you take somebody who's eating a plant-based diet on a regular basis, how often do they have to eat a steak before they start to have the negative effects? Because my guess is, I mean, if you're eating this way, I think you can have some turkey on Thanksgiving. I think you can have some, some birthday cake for your birthday. You can have, it's infrequent, I think it's going to be fine. I don't know what those numbers are. I'm sure somebody's looking at them. Is weekly too much? I grew up, we had meat maybe once a week, Sunday roast. And the rest of the week, it was mostly stuff from the garden. Is that too much? I don't know. But what we do in America is we eat like it's a holiday 3 times a day. And that's what's gotten us into trouble. So if we could space that out, we eat 90% or more of our food is plant-based, and the animal products become infrequent. Ice cream is a celebration, not a every night thing. It's when those things become a rare celebration, not a, I made it through another day, give me a scoop of ice cream. So, I got off on a tangent, but that's kind of where the fiber is. Something about fiber feeds the healthy bacteria for our bodies that keep us well. There's this whole idea of buying probiotics, which are the healthy bacteria that you can take. And then you can buy prebiotics to feed the healthy bacteria to keep them alive and well. Do you know what prebiotics are? Fiber. So just eat it. Don't go spend the money. And you'll grow a nice, healthy mix of bacteria and fungus and all those good things that are supposed to be in your intestinal tract. So, any other questions? We got a couple more minutes.
I do have a question. With that study, are they trying to go, or I don't know if they, because it sounds like, meat eaters, there's a stereotype, and you'll be like a fast food person, just with a lot of processed food, the meat, and then vegans is the other extreme. But, what we're saying here in this spectrum, have they tried, or have they mentioned that there's some interest in chicken? Someone who does whole foods and some,
I don't know.
or fish.
They took the average American who's eating animal products on a daily basis.
And processed food, because the processed food aspect, I think, is a big factor that affecting the flora.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So eggs did it, cheese did it, fish, chicken, beef, any animal product caused this boost in TMAO, which accelerates atherosclerosis. So any of them did it. But again, the question I have is, how long, if you stayed away from that, what's the optimal interval? You know, because a lot of people aren't ready to say, I'm not going to ever eat it, but maybe once a week would be reasonable if you get the health benefits, which I'm sure you'd get more health benefits once a week than every day. So it's finding where that is, where you can sustain it, what will work for you long term, plus give you the health results that you want. Other questions?
Egg whites, are they okay as long as you're not eating the yolk?
The egg, well, the yolk is where the cholesterol is. The egg white is egg protein, albumin.
Right, so it's okay to do.
It causes that boost in the TMAO that we're talking about.
And the egg beaters would be the same?
Yeah, I think those are mostly the egg white, I'm sure. I think there are some...
There's some different, I've never really had them, but I was kind of looking at those the other day, and I just wasn't sure.
I didn't need to read the label on them. I'm not sure what's in them. However, if you're looking for something to replace eggs, there's that, I think it's like page 120 something or the PCRM replacement chart. Things you can do, and they have eggs. Here's some other things you can do in your recipes if you're trying to get away from eggs. If you like scrambled eggs, that tofu scramble recipe that's in there is pretty good.
Okay.
You know, it's not, I mean, you know it's not eggs, but it gives you, you put a little saffron or something in there to give that yellow color too, and it's like, wow, you know, color is there, and the consistency is there, and it's not bad. It tastes good. It doesn't taste like eggs, but it tastes pretty good. Any other questions? Okay, well, I hope you've got a nice list of things you're going to try. We're going to try some nice recipes that are plant-based. Come up with some of these kind of things, the burritos and the rice and beans and stir-fry, and lots of options out there. So, parting thought, defeat is not the worst of failures. Not to have tried is the true failure. And you're here, so because you're here, I'm assuming you're trying some things, and you're finding success even because you're making some changes. So don't forget to take a walk.
Prostate cancer is a leading cause of illness and death among men in the Western world, but the prostate cancer rates in Asia can be as much as 10 times lower. And maybe genetically they're just that much less likely to get it? No. Japanese and Chinese Americans have high prostate cancer rates as well. In the U.S., up to nearly 1 in 3 men in their 30s already have small prostate cancers brewing, and that grows to nearly 2/3 of American men by their 60s. On autopsy, most older men were found to have unknown cancerous tumors in their prostates. What's remarkable is that Asian men seem to have the same prevalence of these hidden, latent prostate cancers on autopsy, but the tumors don't tend to grow enough to cause problems. In Japan, men die with their tumors rather than from their tumors. Of course, that's changing as Asian populations continue to westernize their diets. What is it about Western diets that's fueling cancer growth? Well, it could be carcinogens in the diet accelerating the growth of cancer. The typical U.S. diet is rich in animal fats and meats, but it could also be something protective in Asian diets that's slowing the cancer growth, like fruits and vegetables, soy foods, or green tea. How might one figure out if there's a link between tea consumption and the risk and progression of prostate cancer? Well, you can see if tea drinkers tend to get less cancer in the future, and if cancer victims tended to have drank less tea in the past. Dozens of studies have done just that, and although the results were mixed, overall tea consumption was associated with a lower risk of prostate cancer. And so tea consumption might indeed play a protective role. But just because tea drinkers get less cancer doesn't mean it's necessarily the tea. Maybe tea drinking is just a sign of a more traditional lifestyle. Maybe tea drinkers are less likely to be patrons of the 1,000 KFC outlets now in Japan, for example. To control for as many factors as possible, you could perform in vitro studies in a lab where you take everything else out of the equation except green tea and prostate cancer by dripping green tea compounds directly onto prostate cancer cells in a petri dish, which can cause them to self-destruct. But are enough green tea compounds absorbed into our bloodstream when we drink it? Looks like it takes about a concentration of 40 picomoles per milliliter to cut the viability of human prostate cancer cells more than half in a petri dish. How much green tea would men have to drink to get concentrations that high in their prostate glands? Well, if you have men drink 6 cups of green tea a day before undergoing prostate removal surgery, they can indeed build up that 40 picomole cancer-stopping concentration in their prostate tissue. That may explain why some studies failed to find an association between tea drinking and cancer. In the US, for example, the high tea drinking group may be defined as more than 5 cups of tea a week, which didn't seem to do much. But in Japan, the high tea drinking group can be 5 more cups a day, which appeared to cut the risk of aggressive prostate cancer about in half. Not apparently by preventing the formation of the cancer in the first place, but perhaps by slowing or stopping the cancer's growth. If green tea can stop the growth of prostate cancer, why not try giving green tea to prostate cancer patients to see if it'll help?
If you're suffering from the common cold, or even if you want to improve your digestion and build your immune system, I have a detox tip for you. Now, what do you do when you have the common cold? You get a flu shot, of course, right? Well, I'm not talking about that kind of flu shot. I'm talking about my kind of flu shot. We're gonna clear your sinuses and detox that common cold right out of you. With what? A shot of apple cider vinegar and some pretty amazing ingredients. I have apple cider vinegar, lemon, ginger, honey, garlic. There's more than one way to do this, but let me show you a couple ways. First, I'm just going to combine all of the ingredients. I have 2 cups apple cider vinegar. I sliced up 1 lemon. I'm just putting the whole thing in. About like a 2-inch piece of ginger. Now I'm using honey. I'm using raw organic honey, so make sure it's raw. It's going to have more healing properties. And next, about 2 cloves garlic. Now we want to get the full benefit of this concoction, and it's best to actually leave this out for a few weeks even, let's say 4 to 6 weeks, so all of those ingredients can just kind of meld together. But here's another option, because I want to drink this today, so I'm going to throw all the contents into a blender. This step is also optional. Now you can drink it with the pulp, but I'm going to strain it out for a nice clear liquid. If you don't have a cold, this shot is good to take daily even for increased circulation, more energy, and an improved immune system. So I'm just going to pour this into a jar, and I will store it in the refrigerator. You know, it's going to store for at least a year. You can drink your shot straight, or you can also add it to a glass and fill the glass with water for a more diluted liquid. Whew. Be deliciously healthy.
You might be saying, I think I might have the beginnings of Alzheimer's disease. Could that be? Doctors look for 5 things. They first look for, can you learn and remember? Then can you reason things out and solve problems? They also look for what's called visual spatial ability. Can you recognize shapes? If I ask you to draw a clock, can you get the numbers in order and that kind of thing? Then they also look at language, and then they look at personality. If all 5 of those things are goofing up, then doctors say, I think this could be Alzheimer's disease. All right, you go to the doctor. You say, I don't want that. My parents had Alzheimer's disease, my father had, I don't want this. And the doctor sits you down and they say, well, it's genetic. You should pick different parents. That's what you can do. Well, here are the numbers. If one parent gives you this gene called the ApoE4 allele, if you get that from one parent, you have 3 times the risk of Alzheimer's disease compared to not having it. And if you got it from both parents, you've got between 10 and 15 times the risk. And that's the end of the story for most people. Nothing you can do, just wait and see what happens. Wait a minute. Turns out there's a lot you can do. Anybody know what this is? That is Chicago, exactly. And the reason I'm showing you Chicago is back in 1993, an important study began called the Chicago Health and Aging Project. And they brought in a large group, thousands of healthy people, and they carefully tracked what they were eating. And then, as 1 year and another year and another year and another year went by, they looked at links between what they had been eating and who stayed mentally clear and who did not. And the first thing that they tracked was something that I knew about when I was a kid. When I was growing up in Fargo, North Dakota, I'd run down to the kitchen, my mom would be cooking bacon. And her 5 kids would gather around and she would take a fork and carefully pull the bacon strips out of the pan and put them on a paper towel to drain. And when all the bacon was out of the pan, she had a pan filled with hot grease that she was not going to throw away, right? So she would take that hot bacon grease and carefully pour it into a jar to save it. Now, the bacon grease jar did not go in the refrigerator. She just put it on the shelf because she knew that as bacon grease cools down, what happens to it? It solidifies, right? It turns into this waxy solid. And the next day she would spoon it back into the frying pan and fry eggs in it. It's amazing that any of her kids lived to adulthood, but that's what we did. The fact that bacon grease is solid at room temperature is a sign that it's very high in what is called saturated fat. You've heard of saturated fat, right? This is the kind that raises your cholesterol. Well, it's in bacon, it's also in butter and other dairy products, and it's in meat. And these were things that we ate every day in growing up in Fargo, and maybe you grew up with the same kind of pattern. And that was the first thing that the researchers at Chicago started keying in on. Some people ate relatively little saturated fat, 13 grams a day. Others got about twice that amount, 25 grams a day. And they looked at who got Alzheimer's disease and who didn't. And here are the numbers. The people who got the 25 grams a day had more than 3 times the Alzheimer's risk compared to the others. Okay, so that's our first clue. And it's relatively easy to get up to that 25 grams a day. If I take a couple of eggs, that's 3 grams of saturated fat. Let me add a strip of bacon, that's another gram. Let me take a chicken thigh. Even without the skin, it's about 5 grams of saturated. Did you know that chicken has a substantial amount of fat? About 5 grams in a chicken thigh with no skin. Glass of milk, another 5 grams. Oh yeah, pizza. Okay, so one pizza for one, is about 12, and you add that up, I'm in the high-risk group. Do you know anybody who eats that way? Everybody eats that way. This is the way Americans eat. Okay, but it's not just Alzheimer's disease. Researchers in Finland said, what about this mild cognitive impairment? You remember me talking about this condition where you're still yourself, but your memory is starting to be bad. They brought in a group of people, and they were 50 years old when they brought them in. They tracked them up into their 70s, and they looked at who got mild cognitive dementia, who didn't. And they tracked their saturated fat. Some were low, some were high in saturated fat. And here are the numbers. The people who got this bad fat had a lot more of the mild cognitive impairment also. So there's something about bacon grease and dairy fat and so forth that is harming the brain. Now, what about people who have that gene? Remember the ApoE epsilon 4 allele, the one that condemns you? Well, they looked at those folks. Some people who had that gene avoided bad fats. Some people who had the gene didn't avoid them, and they had a high fat intake. Here are the numbers. Dramatic difference. So, in other words, the people who had the gene, but they were avoiding the bad fats, tended to keep their memory. The people who had the gene and ate the bacon grease and so forth, their memories went. Is this making sense? Okay. So, oh yeah, what about that? What about that? Well, you go into a typical donut shop, and the donuts are frying in, you know about trans fats, right? Partially hydrogenated oil. This is the shortening they put in there. It's solid when they put it in. It heats up and it liquefies, and it has that mouth feel that people like. It's in a lot of snack foods. And in Chicago, some people ate relatively little. Some people ate a lot of it. And here are the numbers. Dramatic difference. Okay, so about 5 times the risk
if you indulge in a lot of these trans fats versus not indulging in it. Now, when doctors saw those numbers, when the research community saw those numbers, they were horrified because they thought, how many Americans are eating these bad fats, not just, well, I mean, every day, a few times a day. These are routine. We feed them to kids. When I saw those numbers, I was thrilled because it means we can choose what we're going to eat starting right this minute. And we can start pushing the odds in our own favor. All right, so there are 3 steps for using power foods for the brain. The first is to skip the bad fats. The second is to knock out free radicals. In a minute, I'm going to tell you what they are. And the third thing is to exercise your brain. We're going to cover all of them. Okay, first, let's start with skipping the bad fats. All right, so I'm in Chicago and I'm eating all these bad things. Can I make some changes? Well, I better because my risk of Alzheimer's is high. So what can I do? Let me get rid of that glass of milk. How about that? We'll get rid of that and we'll have, how many have tasted almond milk? It's fine, right? Very tasty, has no saturated fat. So if the numbers in Chicago apply to me, I just cut my risk of Alzheimer's disease because I got away from the saturated fat. Can I do better than that? Can I get rid of more foods? Easily, sure. Let's get rid of that bacon. How about having veggie bacon instead? Let's get rid of the eggs. How about a big bowl of oatmeal with blueberries and strawberries? Let's get rid of that chicken thigh. I'll have a big submarine sandwich filled with all the veggies. And how am I going to do? Well, if the research numbers apply to me, my Alzheimer's risk just fell even more. Is there something else that I can change? Oh yeah, what about that pizza? Could I get a vegan pizza? You know, pizza is a delivery vehicle for cheese. And so, you know it's true. So we're going to get rid of that. We're going to bring in the vegan pizza. And now, how am I doing? Well, I can't tell you because nobody in Chicago eats that well. But, however, there are some people who eat that well. In Loma Linda, California, diets vary dramatically. And people at Loma Linda University tracked a group of what they called heavy meat eaters. And over a 6-year period, they looked at who was gradually losing their brain function. And they compared them with a group of vegetarians. The vegetarians did a whole lot better, okay? All right, so, by the way, you do need some fat, right? This is not a zero-fat diet, and the brain actually does need some good fats. So which fat is best for the brain? Is it A, corn oil, B, peanut oil, C, sunflower oil, or D, olive oil?